They didn't just leave, they ghosted. Mercedes, BMW, and Audi, gone from the American market almost overnight. No farewell tours, no public statements, just an empty void where luxury used to be. One minute, dealerships were filled with high-performance machines, and the next, silence. What could possibly make three of the most iconic automakers just vanish from the United States? Here's the kicker. It wasn't a business decision. It wasn't even about profits or losses. It was a bold, almost reckless move triggered by one single sentence from President Trump. 12 words that detonated like a bomb in the global auto industry. And when the dust settled, the damage was beyond repair. Now entire communities are bracing for impact. Jobs on the line, dealerships deserted, and American car culture hanging by a thread. How did it all fall apart? Why did these luxury giants choose to walk away? And more importantly, could this be the start of something much bigger and far more dangerous? The breaking point. For German automakers, this wasn't just about pride or defiance. It was about survival. Mercedes, BMW, and Audi faced a stark financial reality. The cost of staying in the American market had become unsustainable overnight. At the heart of the crisis was the way luxury cars are built. Unlike mass-market vehicles, luxury models often require precision components sourced from specialized manufacturers across Europe and Asia. The German brands had spent decades perfecting a system where key parts, such as engine control units, digital dashboards, and advanced safety systems, were manufactured overseas and then assembled in flagship factories in the United States. This model allowed for both efficiency and quality, ensuring that American-made models could still be considered genuinely German. Trump's tariff policy disrupted this intricate dance. With a 200% tax slapped on any foreign-made part, the price of even partially imported cars became economically unfeasible. BMW's South Carolina plant, for instance, could no longer viably assemble SUVs if the engines came from Germany. Audi's strategy of importing high-tech components from Europe to integrate into American-assembled sedans became a logistical nightmare. Corporate boardrooms in Stuttgart and Munich held emergency meetings, running every possible financial scenario. Could they source more parts domestically? No, because American factories did not produce the highly specialized components needed to maintain the brand's luxury standards. Could they absorb the tariff and pass the cost to consumers? Not realistically. Who would buy a $50,000 car suddenly priced at $70,000? With no viable options, the decision became painfully clear: retreat. This wasn't an impulsive or reactive move. It was a calculated strategy to avoid financial ruin. Leaving the American market would hurt, but staying could bankrupt entire divisions. The automakers chose to prioritize their long-term survival, even if it meant abandoning a market they had spent decades cultivating. While corporate decisions were driven by numbers, for American workers, it felt personal. The human cost. Jobs on the line. 280,000 jobs gone overnight. Can these communities survive? The human cost of the German automakers' exodus cannot be overstated. In states like Alabama and South Carolina, entire towns were economically tied to the success of Mercedes, BMW, and Audi. These weren't just dealerships, they were economic anchors. Workers who had spent their lives at these plants woke up to find their futures uncertain. Mechanics who specialized in German engineering were suddenly without work. Showroom managers, often the face of luxury brands in their communities, were now figuring out how to break the news to longtime customers. Stories of technicians who had moved their families closer to factories, investing in homes and schools, now filled the local news reports. The ripple effect extended beyond the factories. Local suppliers, car detailers, and logistics companies suddenly found themselves without contracts. Even community events sponsored by these brands vanished, leaving a cultural as well as an economic void. The sense of betrayal was palpable. Workers who had seen Trump as a champion of American manufacturing now questioned his decision-making. Communities struggled. Trump doubled down on his stance, setting off a political firestorm. We spent hours researching how this exodus impacts jobs and communities. If you value deep, fact-driven analysis like this, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest insights. Political backlash. Trump's base feels the heat. Trump promised jobs, so why are his own supporters calling it a betrayal? In the heartland of America, where loyalty to Trump was once unwavering, cracks are beginning to show. The automotive manufacturing sector, which had been a stronghold of support, is now divided. For many workers, the loss of German luxury brands is more than just economic. It's personal. Voters who once cheered Trump's tough stance on trade now find themselves grappling with the consequences. Social media is filled with stories of workers venting their frustration, feeling caught between supporting a leader they once believed in and dealing with the harsh reality of economic collapse. Political analysts are noting a significant shift in sentiment, particularly in rural areas that relied on these jobs. Media outlets are quick to seize the narrative. Headlines question whether Trump's policies are hurting the very people they were meant to protect. As the political storm intensifies, Republican strategists are increasingly worried about maintaining support in swing states. Rural America grapples with the fallout, and the corporate world is making moves of its own. Strategic realignment. Europe's response. Germany didn't just take the hit, they hit back harder than anyone expected. When the United States imposed a 200% tariff on foreign-made automobiles and parts, German automakers were among the hardest hit. The move sent shockwaves throughout the global automotive industry. But the response from Germany was nothing short of bold. Rather than accepting the economic blow, German officials and automotive giants retaliated in a coordinated and calculated way. They didn't just leave quietly, they turned their attention elsewhere, making it clear that the United States had lost something significant. Germany's initial reaction was swift and resolute. Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock addressed the press within 24 hours of the tariff announcement, labeling the policy as nothing less than economic sabotage. Standing at a podium in Berlin, she declared that the United States had crossed a line, not just with Germany but with the entire European Union. Her words were echoed by political leaders across Europe as they condemned what they described as a reckless and unjustified act of protectionism. It wasn't just political rhetoric. It was a declaration of economic warfare. The European Union did not hesitate to respond formally. Within days, the EU filed a comprehensive complaint with the World Trade Organization, arguing that the tariffs violated established international trade agreements. EU trade officials emphasized that targeting German luxury automakers was a direct attack on one of Europe's most significant economic sectors. The complaint sought not only the reversal of the tariffs, but also punitive measures against the United States for disrupting global automotive trade. Analysts noted that this marked one of the most aggressive moves the EU had taken in recent trade disputes. Simultaneously, German automakers took matters into their own hands, realizing that the United States was becoming increasingly hostile to foreign manufacturing. Companies like Mercedes, BMW, and Audi began strategically realigning their global operations. They shifted their focus to emerging markets where growth was steady and political risk minimal. China and India became the focal points of this new strategy. Chinese officials, eager to attract luxury manufacturing, quickly offered generous incentives, including tax breaks and fast-track permits for factory construction. BMW announced plans to expand its electric vehicle production in Guangdong, while Mercedes invested in a new research and development center in Mumbai. This strategic pivot marked a significant shift away from the U.S. market. German automakers were no longer just diversifying. They were prioritizing markets that were more stable and welcoming. Analysts argued that the United States, once seen as an essential market for German luxury cars, was now being viewed as too politically volatile to justify continued investment. While Trump's tariffs aimed to protect American jobs, they inadvertently pushed manufacturing and innovation to Asia, where governments were more than willing to support the transition. Europe retaliates on the global stage, and Wall Street is dealing with its own fallout. Wall Street whiplash, the financial repercussions. Insiders saw it coming, but most investors didn't. The result? A financial bloodbath. As news of the German automakers' exit hit the airwaves, Wall Street was already experiencing unprecedented volatility. The departure of Mercedes, BMW, and Audi from the United States sent shockwaves through the automotive sector, triggering massive sell-offs and market confusion. Investors scrambled to make sense of the situation, but those with insider knowledge had already made their moves. Days before the official announcements, trading volumes for German automotive stocks on the New York Stock Exchange had spiked suspiciously. Analysts noticed unusual patterns, large blocks of shares being sold off by institutional investors, followed by rapid declines in stock prices. The pattern was clear. Some investors knew the exodus was coming and cashed out before the collapse. Regulatory bodies quickly took notice, launching investigations into possible insider trading. It appeared that those closest to the industry had strategically positioned themselves to avoid the losses. For the average investor, the losses were staggering. Stocks of Daimler, AG, BMW Group, and Volkswagen AG plummeted within hours of the news. Meanwhile, American automakers like Ford and General Motors saw brief surges as speculators bet that domestic brands would fill the void left by the German giants. However, this optimism was short-lived. Once it became clear that the departure of luxury automakers would lead to a broader economic downturn, those gains reversed, and U.S. automotive stocks also began to slide. Financial analysts quickly dissected the situation, highlighting how Trump's tariffs had sparked more than just an industrial shift. They had ignited financial chaos. As luxury brands pulled out, suppliers and logistics companies tied to German automakers also took massive hits. From tire manufacturers to component suppliers, the ripple effect was brutal. Some hedge funds that shorted the stocks of German manufacturers made substantial gains, but the overall market reaction was overwhelmingly negative. Regulatory agencies, including the Securities and Exchange Commission, launched probes into trades made just before the announcement. There were whispers of insider trading among key executives, who allegedly moved assets days before the tariffs were formally revealed. These investigations, however, lagged behind the market response. The financial fallout had already unfolded, leaving ordinary investors with severe losses, while the well-connected had protected their wealth. While investors scrambled to protect their assets, corporate America has already made a cold calculation. Corporate retreat, leaving the U.S. for good. Once seen as the land of opportunity, America now looks too risky for global brands. The sudden departure of Mercedes, BMW, and Audi was not just a reaction to tariffs. It was a strategic reassessment of the American market as a whole. Companies worldwide began to reconsider their U.S. operations, viewing the country as increasingly unpredictable. Automakers like Hyundai and Toyota are quietly increasing their Asian production capacity, while companies that supply parts to luxury brands are diversifying away from the United States. The perception that the U.S. is politically volatile is spreading, making it less attractive for long-term investments. In corporate boardrooms, discussions shifted from how to navigate tariffs to whether staying in the U.S. was even worth it. The fear of unpredictable policy changes has altered strategic planning, leading companies to strengthen their presence in Europe and Asia instead. This realignment marks a fundamental shift away from the U.S. as a reliable business environment, as corporations recalculate their future. The ideological battle over American jobs is just heating up. The global manufacturing shift, consequences of leaving America. When luxury brands pull out of America, the entire global auto industry takes notice. The sudden exit of Mercedes, BMW, and Audi from the United States has created a ripple effect that extends far beyond American borders. The departure of these automotive giants has not only shocked the local economy, but also sent shockwaves through the global manufacturing community. In the wake of this unexpected move, other foreign automakers are reconsidering their commitment to the American market, questioning whether it is still a safe place to do business. For decades, America has been considered one of the most lucrative and stable markets for automotive production. Brands like Toyota, Honda, and Volkswagen have heavily invested in building and operating assembly plants across the country. These facilities not only cater to domestic consumers, but also serve as crucial hubs for exporting vehicles to other markets. However, the abrupt exit of German luxury brands has caused these companies to reevaluate their strategies. If the U.S. government can suddenly impose a 200% tariff on foreign-made parts and vehicles, what guarantees do they have that similar policies will not affect them in the future? The concern among automakers is not just theoretical. Toyota, for example, has been a staple in American car culture for decades, with models like the Camry and the Tacoma being produced domestically. Yet Toyota's supply chain, much like those of BMW and Mercedes, relies on a complex web of international components. The same is true for Honda, which assembles cars in Ohio, but sources electronics and drivetrain parts from Asia. Volkswagen, which has made significant inroads in the electric vehicle market with models like the ID. 4. Also finds itself in a precarious position as it balances U.S. production with European engineering. As these companies calculate the risks, they face a difficult choice. Should they continue to produce in America, risking sudden policy changes that could cripple their profitability? Or should they follow the lead of German automakers and relocate production to more politically stable regions? Some analysts predict that other automakers might adopt a hybrid approach, maintaining a minimal production footprint in the United States while expanding operations in countries with more predictable trade policies, such as Canada, Japan, and South Korea. This reevaluation of global supply chains goes beyond the automotive industry. Manufacturers in other sectors are also paying attention, particularly those heavily dependent on imported components. Electronics, heavy machinery, and even consumer goods companies are reassessing whether the United States remains a reliable hub for manufacturing and distribution. Countries like Japan, South Korea, and Canada are now reconsidering their trade agreements with the U.S., questioning whether the benefits outweigh the risks. While automakers are recalculating their risks, technology is quietly taking over the manufacturing world. The automation dilemma. Are jobs really coming back? Trump wanted jobs back, but what if automation has already replaced them? As the political debate over tariffs rages on, a quieter revolution is reshaping the automotive landscape: automation. The idea of bringing manufacturing jobs back to America resonates with many voters, but the harsh reality is that many of these jobs have already been lost to robots, not to foreign workers. German automakers, especially those moving out of the United States, are not just looking for cheaper labor. They are seeking greater automation. In countries like China and South Korea, Mercedes, BMW, and Audi are establishing high-tech automated plants that can produce luxury vehicles with minimal human intervention. These new factories are not just assembly lines. They are technological ecosystems where robots, guided by artificial intelligence, handle everything from welding and painting to quality control. Even if production were brought back to the United States, it would likely be heavily automated, leaving workers without jobs. In the past decade, the automotive industry has seen a significant shift toward AI-driven production lines. Robots now perform tasks that once required skilled labor, such as precision welding and intricate assembly. The efficiency gains are undeniable, but they come at the cost of human employment. The irony of the tariff policy is that while it aimed to restore jobs, it may inadvertently hasten the adoption of more automation. Faced with higher production costs due to tariffs, automakers might decide to invest more in automated technologies rather than rehiring displaced workers. Automation, after all, is immune to tariffs, wage disputes, and political backlash. This shift raises a critical question about the future of the American workforce. In this new industrial landscape, the jobs that remain are no longer those of assembly line workers, but of software engineers and robotics maintenance technicians. Training workers for these high-skilled positions is not just a challenge, it is a fundamental economic transformation. While Trump's policy aims to bring back blue-collar jobs, the reality is that the future of manufacturing is increasingly white-collar and highly technical. Technology evolves and American workers aren't giving up. They're gearing up for a fight: the worker rebellion. Labor unions on the rise. Factory floors are empty, but the streets are full. Workers are demanding answers. As German automakers leave, a new labor movement is emerging, driven by frustration and betrayal. Workers who once believed in Trump's promise to restore manufacturing jobs are now rallying for job protection laws and trade policy reform. In states like Alabama and South Carolina, where BMW and Mercedes had major operations, the sense of betrayal is palpable. Workers are not just mourning their lost jobs, They are actively protesting the policies that led to their displacement. Union organizers, long dormant in these regions, are seizing the moment. Rallies are being held at shuttered factories, and workers who never considered joining a union before are now signing up in droves. Traditionally, conservative workers are finding themselves in unexpected alliances with pro-labor movements. Political alliances are shifting as communities rally around the idea that job security should not be subject to unpredictable trade wars. For many, this is not just about a single policy. It is about protecting the economic stability of their families and towns. The long-term political consequences could be significant. If this new wave of labor activism gains traction, it might reshape American politics, blurring the lines between traditional party loyalties. Workers who once viewed unions with suspicion are now embracing collective bargaining as a tool for survival. Could this spark a broader resurgence of labor rights movements across the United States? The most significant impact of this crisis isn't just corporate, it's cultural, as America's auto identity faces an existential threat. Economic nationalism versus globalization. Is Trump right to punish companies that offshore jobs, or is he fighting a battle America has already lost? This question lies at the heart of the current economic conflict that has erupted with the sudden departure of Mercedes, BMW, and Audi from the United States market. The ideological clash between economic nationalism and globalization has never been more intense, and the consequences of this conflict are shaping not just the automotive industry, but the entire landscape of American manufacturing. Economic nationalism, as championed by Trump, is rooted in the belief that domestic production must be prioritized over global supply chains. The logic is straightforward. Penalize companies that move jobs overseas and reward those that manufacture locally. In this context, Trump's tariffs on foreign-made cars and parts were not just a policy move, but a statement, a declaration that America will no longer tolerate the outsourcing of jobs to other countries. To Trump and his supporters, these tariffs are seen as a necessary measure to reclaim American manufacturing and reduce dependency on global markets. However, the counterargument to this stance is powerful and well-founded. Globalization, which has shaped modern economies for decades, is not something that can simply be reversed with tariffs. Manufacturing today is an intricate web of supply chains that span continents. Parts for a single car might come from Germany, South Korea, Japan, and Mexico, before being assembled in the United States. Punishing companies that rely on these global networks does not just affect corporate profits, it can dismantle entire industries. Historical attempts to resurrect domestic manufacturing through protectionist policies have often produced mixed results. In the 1980s, the U.S. imposed tariffs on Japanese cars to protect American automakers. While this initially boosted local production, it also led to price increases and encouraged Japanese companies to build factories in the U.S. rather than import vehicles. Similarly, Trump's steel tariffs in his first term aimed to revive American steel production, but ended up raising costs for U.S. manufacturers who relied on imported steel, leading to job losses in industries like construction and automotive. The real question is whether Trump's current approach represents bold leadership or outdated economic thinking. Advocates argue that without taking a hard stance, American manufacturing will continue to decline, leaving the country vulnerable to foreign competition. Critics, however, warn that this strategy ignores the realities of a globalized economy and risks isolating the United States from valuable international partnerships. As this ideological conflict unfolds, the luxury brands that left America are fighting to preserve their global dominance, despite the backlash. Can German luxury survive the backlash? Mercedes, BMW, and Audi may have left the U.S., but will their prestige survive the backlash? For these luxury brands, the decision to exit the American market was not just a financial calculation. It was a strategic pivot meant to preserve their long-term viability. However, the move has sparked outrage, both among consumers and industry insiders who view it as a betrayal of American loyalty. To manage the fallout, German automakers have launched global PR campaigns, emphasizing the economic necessity of their decision. Mercedes has focused on highlighting the complexity of modern manufacturing and how the tariffs made it financially unviable to continue production in the US. BMW, meanwhile, is pushing a message of resilience, assuring customers that they will maintain support and service for existing owners. Audi is investing heavily in electric vehicle technology, positioning itself as a forward-thinking brand that is adapting to global economic challenges. Financially, these companies are diversifying investments to reduce political risk. By expanding in Asia, particularly China, they aim to counterbalance losses from the US market. This move also reflects a strategic shift, as China's luxury market continues to grow rapidly, offering a more stable environment than the politically volatile US. The challenge remains whether these brands can maintain their global dominance despite leaving the United States. Maintaining consumer loyalty in Europe and Asia, while placating American fans from a distance, will require careful branding and consistent quality assurance. They must prove that their exit from the US was a business decision, not an abandonment of their customer base. The real question isn't just about survival, it's about the future of manufacturing itself. As these companies realign, the entire industry faces a new reality shaped by shifting political landscapes and emerging technologies. But while German automakers look ahead, the question remains: will America adapt to the changing tides of global manufacturing, or resist and fall behind? The future of American manufacturing. John Deere didn't just make a choice, they set a precedent. Will America follow their path, or will political pressure force a new strategy? The departure of German luxury brands from the US raises an uncomfortable question. Is America losing its place as a manufacturing superpower? The long-term economic consequences of this shift are profound. Other global companies are watching closely, considering whether they too might abandon the US market in favor of regions less affected by sudden political shifts. Automation and AI are further complicating this landscape, as jobs once thought secure are increasingly threatened by technological advancements. This fight isn't just about tariffs or jobs, it's about redefining America's economic identity for decades to come. Whether the US adapts or doubles down on nationalism will determine its role in the global economy moving forward. The departure of Mercedes, BMW, and Audi from the US is more than just a business decision. It's a wake-up call for the entire automotive industry. As America grapples with the fallout, one question remains: can the US reclaim its place in global manufacturing, or is this the beginning of a new era? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth analysis.